everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of CU Faith Fridays. Today we have with us an alum, a very recent alum, Danielle Schiavone.
Schiavone.
Schiavone, okay, great.
Yes.
I've always wondered how to say your last name. Danielle Schiavone. So Danielle, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Colleen. So like you said, my name's Danielle. I graduated last May, so May of 2019. And then I've been just working ever since.
Okay, awesome. Great. Well, I guess our first question will start off. You graduated so recently, just a year ago, and you've been working. But what was your major when you were at Caldwell, and where have you been working now?
So when I was at Caldwell, I majored in nursing. I got my bachelor's of science degree in nursing. And then I took my boards about a month and a half later. And ever since, I have been working at Hackensack University Medical Center in their children's hospital as a pediatric ICU nurse.
Great. Wow, that's awesome. Did you always know that you wanted to be a pediatric nurse, or was that something that you discovered along the way?
I always knew I wanted to do pediatrics. And then as I learned more about the profession, I knew I also wanted to do critical care. And it was a solid few years that I was set on pediatric ICU. Even when I was in school, I did research projects on topics within that specialty. So it was definitely solidified for me fairly early on.
Okay, great. And that's pretty crazy that you were able to get kind of your dream job right off the bat. Is that something that normally happens with nurses, or were you just kind of right place, right time?
I was expecting to have to work years before I became even close to that. I interviewed at a lot of general pediatrics jobs, other specialties within the field of pediatrics, but never critical care. And I was okay with that. I knew that I had to put in the time and the effort and kind of ride the learning curve before I got there. And then I got the interview at Hackensack, which is over an hour from me. So I definitely compromised with a long commute. Um, I feel like my resume got me the interview, and then I ended up really connecting with the manager. And she just said that she was going to take a chance on me, and here I am.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, hopefully she feels like, especially during this time, hopefully she feels grateful for the chance that she took on you. So I'm sure she does. Um, so let's talk a little bit about when you were in college, and your time in Caldwell. What are some of the things that you were involved in while you were there?
Um, okay, so I worked for the Office of Admissions as an ambassador. So that consisted of working not only within the office, but giving tours, working events, connecting with high school students, and not necessarily trying to get them to attend Caldwell, but have them find the school that's best fit for them. I worked for the Office of Student Engagement as an orientation leader. So I worked over the summers with the incoming freshman class. So it was nice to see that continuum of the high school students that I helped explore Caldwell, and then see them, attend all the events and then commit to the school. And I saw them through to their freshman orientation. And then, of course, with you and campus ministry, um, Catholic Relief Services, I was an ambassador for that group. And then just attending the masses and different campus ministry events with you.
What do you feel like? Well, first of all, lots of leadership positions, which is really amazing that you kind of took hold of that at Caldwell. What would you say are some of your kind of biggest takeaways, or the things that have really stuck with you since you've graduated and are now a year out?
I think connecting with people with an open mind. I feel like, especially with my work with admissions, there's this idea that when you say with the high school students that it's our goal to have them come to Caldwell. And that wasn't it. I mean, of course I cared, but I didn't care one way or another if they were going to choose Caldwell, I didn't want them to pick the school if that wasn't going to be a place of comfort for them and of growth and of happiness. And I wanted them to pick a school that they belonged in. And so when speaking to them, I didn't have the notion in mind that I'm going to get them to come to the school. It was, I want to hear what they need and what they like and what they want. And then I would help them find a place that's right for them. And I feel like as I go along in my journey and in life, that when I speak to someone, I don't want to have this notion in my mind that I know what they need or what they want or what they're feeling. I want them to tell me, and then I can help them and communicate with them accordingly.
Do you feel like that that idea or that experience of learning that you glean from Caldwell, do you feel like you've seen that play out
Ignore my
as a
dogs.
nurse?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the last part?
I love it. Um, no, just that experience of kind of what you glean from Caldwell,
Mm-hmm.
of like listening to people, what they need, and what's best for them. How do you feel like that has played out for you in your work as a nurse?
I think similarly, the same idea that we don't know exactly what these people are feeling. When I say these people, I mean not only the children that we work with, but their families and their loved ones. um, we don't know what it's like for them. We can surmise and we can do our best to put ourselves in their shoes, but we don't actually know. And you won't know unless you ask. So if you go into conversations and you go into situations where you assume that they're feeling a certain way or that they're thinking a certain way or that they need one thing or over another, you'll never get to help them to the best of your ability because you're not giving them the chance to share with you what they need. So just the open mind and open-ended conversations, open-ended questions, letting them tell you what you can do for them.
Great. Yeah. Um, let's transition a little bit to some of the faith things that you said you were involved in when you were at Caldwell. So,
Mhm.
attending masses, but then also Catholic relief services, student ambassadors, and for those who are listening who might not know what that is, the Catholic relief services or CRS student ambassadors are student leaders on campus who plan programming around four key areas of justice, including climate change, human trafficking, global hunger, and immigration and refugees. So the group was started at Caldwell when Danielle was a sophomore, I guess, the spring of your sophomore
Sophomore.
year
Yeah, yeah.
in 2017, and has been continuing since, even after you've graduated. So with those faith things that you were involved in, how do you feel like you grew in your faith at Caldwell? And I guess kind of for context of that, what was your faith like when you went into college? And then how did it grow over the 4 years?
So growing up, I was raised Roman Catholic. We went to church. I made all of my sacraments. Um, Coming into Caldwell, I was happy to be attending a Catholic school. Um, I became involved in campus ministry right off the get go. And then when you came in my sophomore year, I became more heavily involved as you did start up CRS on campus. I attended masses, the reading at masses and the singing at masses. It was always something that I loved. And then being able to make a larger impact on a more global scale with CRS was something I loved and I miss. Um, in CRS, my favorite topic, I want to say, is human trafficking and immigration. Those were two areas that we did those simulations on, where we were able to educate both students and staff and faculty on these areas of social justice and do it in a way that they weren't bored or that they didn't think it was important. Like they were able to come to our events and see what we are trying to improve on in our local community and on a larger scale. Um, and that's something that I want to continue working with even after I graduated, because I think it's so important to open people up to the issues that are going on in the world and, things that happen right under our noses. Um, I think aside from CRS, a lot of the service opportunities that I took part of in Caldwell, whether they were long-term trips like the service trip to Belize or short-term opportunities like our midnight runs where we hand out food and clothing to people experiencing homelessness in New York City. Things like that, I am so, so appreciative of getting to do at Caldwell, and I never want to stop doing post grad.
That's awesome. And I guess how would you, for someone who might see just service opportunities as a standalone service opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
for you, how are all of those things, both the justice side of immigration, refugees, and human trafficking, how are all of those things for you connected to your faith or your relationship with God, would you say?
When you do any sort of service opportunity, you meet people and you connect with people. And that is something I've always loved doing. That's one of my favorite things about nursing. Um, when you meet someone, you never know what their story is. You see the smallest fraction of what is actually going on in their life. And it's your job or your role as someone who's trying to get to know them to delve further into whatever they're going through. And so I remember on one of the midnight runs at one of the stops in New York City, I was handing out hygiene packets and I was talking to a man, and we got to talking, and he told me that just 2 weeks prior he was working at a bank and he had a successful job and he had a wife and he had 3 kids. And you just look at him and you would not have pegged him for someone who was so successful just a few weeks prior. And I'm sure that he has met so many people in those past few weeks that didn't even give him the chance to share that side of his life and to share that part of his story. Um, and that is sad for me. That is something that I want to change. That when you meet someone, you don't make these assumptions about them. You give them a chance to share their side of the story. And I put my faith in my ability to do that. I put my faith in that I have the skills and the tools necessary to get someone to share parts of themselves with me, maybe parts of themselves that they don't want to share with everyone else, um, through prayer and through reading about faith and listening in church about faith. It is so important and you need it in order to do most of, especially what I do, but I think everyone needs it to do what they were set out to do.
That's great. And that almost like when I hear you talk about that, it's like God is using you as this instrument or this tool to be a part of that fraction of someone's life, even if it's just for a moment.
Mhm.
And I think that God has given you clearly the grace to know that that is your gift that you can offer the world, whether it's through a service experience or through your everyday life as a nurse, as you encounter
Mhm.
patients and families and all of that. So that's, yeah, that's pretty amazing way to kind of utilize our faith in this world, and that you've connected with that. Let's talk a little bit about what it's like to work at a hospital now. Um, I am hoping that things are calming down just a little bit for you, but what has, you don't have to share like a ton of details, but
Mhm.
just in general, what has it been like? And then where has your faith really helped you continue to journey through this pandemic?
So I work in the pediatric ICU, which is we care for children from birth up until 21 years of age who are critically ill. That can mean a lot to a person. That can mean that they're very sick and they're on ventilators and they're receiving life saving medications. And then others are on the mend, but they're not quite ready to be downgraded to an acute care floor. So we see a wide variety of illnesses and children at all different parts of their life. Since the pandemic happened, we did transition to caring for critically ill adults also. We became one of the COVID ICUs to try to decompress the adult side because they were just so overwhelmed and the curve had been anything but flat. Um, and then it worked as far as decompressing the adult side. I know that they were so appreciative of us taking some of their patients and admitting some of the adults that normally we are not accustomed to caring for. We did see a decrease, and we're still fairly busy as more children are coming in critically ill. My faith has always been a tremendous part of what I do. I pray every day on my way to work, and I pray every day on my way home. Even when I was in school, working in a hospital, I prayed on my way to work every day and prayed on the way home. When I tell people that, they think I mean I pray that everyone lives. I pray that no one new gets sick, and it's not like that. I wish it was. Um, None of us know what God or whatever higher power you believe in if you don't practice Catholicism. We don't know what they are thinking up there. We don't know what they are doing. We don't know what their plan is. All I know is what I have in front of me. I am a healthcare professional, so of course I rely greatly on science and on the power of medicine, but there are a lot of things that medicine can't fix, that medicine can't explain. And I pray every day that whatever's going to happen, whether we can fix someone's medical problem on like an objective science level, that the healing continues beyond that, because we can make a child better. We can get them off the ventilator. We can get them to rehab and on their way home. But the healing extends so much further than their tiny physical body. It extends to their mental health and their emotional health, their spiritual health, and then to all of those healths of their families. Um, we see families who get to take their children home, and we see families who don't. And every day I go into work, and every day when I leave, I just pray that God gives those families and those kids the strength to overcome whatever they're going through, and that they have the skills and the tools they need to be resilient against what they're facing, and that if they don't have those skills and tools, that they eventually are able to acquire them because they need it. And it breaks your heart, but it also makes you so proud of everyone who's going through what they're going through and who are grieving and who are hurting, and you see them get through it and you see them fight, and you just always pray that they're able to continue doing that.
Wow, that's a pretty deep and mature perspective, I think. Yeah, for someone of any age, I think. And I don't know if you feel like that has come from working in healthcare or just kind of your own life and some of the challenges that you faced. But I think that that's really a beautiful way to look at things, almost like this holistic perspective of healing. As you said, it's not just like, okay, science can cure us in one way, but there's so much other healing that has to happen um, throughout someone's life. So that's good. What about some of the, are there any challenges with, anything, any questions or doubts or anything that I think that you have found that you struggle with in terms of faith or being a nurse or anything like that?
Only every day, Colleen.
I know that was probably a terrible question, but
What a loaded question. Every day. It is so hard to keep your faith. I mean, whether they're personal hardships or things that you see in your professional life, especially in this area of my professional life, it's hard. I mean, faith is about trusting. It's about being convinced. I mean, according to the scriptures, it's about believing that like the word of God is true, whether it's seen or unseen. And that's just it. There's so much that's unseen. There's so much hardship that is going on. Again, not only just now, but in this job I do and in my personal life, there's so much sadness and grief and challenges, and overcoming those. And the people who do overcome things like that, their healing and that work that they do inside of them is not something that I can physically see. It is not something tangible. Um, and again, like I pray that they have the strength to continue working on those challenges that they're facing, but it's hard to see them go through it, and it's hard personally to go through it, and it's hard to believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, or that there's some end point that they're going to achieve, because we can't see it. And so you're praying and you're praying and you're putting your faith into this higher power that none of us are able to physically see, and you're just trying to believe. um, when you pray the Nicene Creed at church, you say like, I believe in one God, I believe in the Holy Spirit, you know, and you're saying you believe, and you have to. And when you pray and you say that you believe, like I said, it's because you have to. It's because we need to, because if you don't believe and you don't have faith, what are you putting your faith into? Like, if you don't believe that the power of prayer is going to help people through things, then you're leaving your faith up to science, which is limited. You're leaving your faith up to your own individual abilities, which is limited. You have to believe in something higher,
That is
even when it's hard.
that is a wonderful response. Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's faith. Like that's almost the definition of faith, that you just described. And I think what you see firsthand is so true. And I think to be in the midst of that day in and day out, even outside of a pandemic, I think nursing is hard in that way, especially working with kids. That faith then becomes even more important, and the understanding of faith becomes so much more real to us. And
Mhm.
it's hard work. Faith is hard work, and it's not meant to be easy or taken for granted. It's meant to be something that we really have to work for. And I think that you
Mhm.
just described that so perfectly. So I guess just to kind of close, first of all, is there a favorite way that you like to pray? I know you said you pray a lot in the car as you're going to and from work,
Mhm.
but is there a favorite way you like to pray? And then do you have any kind of lasting thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
When I pray, it is a lot of open conversation. I don't like to get very specific, because then I get myself all anxious. I'm like, oh, I forgot to pray about her and him and that and it. And so I get myself all nervous. um, so of course, when I'm on my way to work, I'm focused on work, and um, sometimes I mention specific people, but really, like, I pray for myself. I pray for my coworkers. I pray for our patients and their families. And then on the way home, I do the same. And then when I'm home, I read a lot of books, faith based books, books about mental health that have like a Christian basis to them, um, podcasts. I mean, on that long drive to work, it's prayer and podcasts are really my two solid activities. When I see something good happen, it makes me want to pray also. I know a lot of people pray when things get bad, and that is so important, because you need the strength to get through whatever hardships you're going through. But when there's good going on, I always try to remember to pray then also, and just feel grateful for whatever good is happening to me and whatever good I have, and acknowledge that that this could be a lot worse, and this could be something that is very difficult, but instead I have something that's so wonderful happening to me. So it's trying to be mindful of not only praying when things are bad, but praying when things are good.
Awesome. Great. Well, good. Well, thank you, Danielle, for being with us today. And I just like to thank all of our listeners. Thanks for listening in to this episode of CU Faith Fridays. And next week, we will be back with a new guest that we'll interview. So thank you.